Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching the sleek silver ships of the Zephyrian fleet arrange themselves in perfect formation. Their vessels gleamed like polished mirrors, all smooth curves and flowing lines that seemed to bend light around them. Beautiful, she had to admit. Like deadly works of art suspended against the starfield. "They're hailing us again, Commander," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communications station. His voice carried that particular tension that came from being vastly outnumbered by an obviously superior force. "Put them through," Chen replied, straightening her worn military jacket. The human fleet around her looked decidedly less impressive than their opponents, angular, utilitarian ships that appeared to be constructed from spare parts and determination rather than advanced metallurgy and aesthetic sensibilities. The hologram that materialized before her was exactly what she'd expected from the Zephyrian military. Tall, graceful, with elongated limbs and skin that shimmered with an internal light. General Kethvar regarded her with what might have been amusement, his large, luminous eyes reflecting the bridge lights. "Commander Chen," he said, his translated voice carrying musical undertones, "I am disappointed. When we heard that humanity had been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, we assumed your species possessed some hidden capability, some technology that justified your inclusion among civilized races." Chen kept her expression neutral. "And what have you concluded, General?" "That the Council has grown soft and sentimental," Kethvar replied with what sounded like genuine regret. "Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are artifacts from a violent past. You fire physical projectiles through chemical combustion, like some ancient siege engine. It is almost sad." Behind Chen, she heard Sergeant Major Williams chuckle quietly. The old Marine had served with her through 3 campaigns, and she knew that particular sound. It was the same chuckle he'd made right before their unit had systematically dismantled a supposedly impregnable enemy position, using nothing but standard infantry tactics and an abundance of creative profanity. "Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate your advanced weaponry, General," Chen asked politely. "Show us how civilized warfare is conducted?" Kethvar's expression shifted to what might have been pity. "If you insist on this futile gesture, I will make it swift. Your ships appear to mount some form of energy shielding. Primitive, but it will require our weapons to operate at perhaps 30% capacity to penetrate." The transmission ended, and the Zephyrian ships began to move with fluid grace, their formation shifting like a school of fish turning in unison. Within moments, they had arranged themselves in a perfect tactical sphere, every vessel positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire while minimizing the possibility of friendly fire incidents. "Textbook," murmured Commander Park from the tactical station. "They've read the same military theory we have, but their execution is flawless. Those ships are probably controlled by a centralized AI that can coordinate movements with microsecond precision." Chen nodded, watching the enemy formation complete its deployment. "What's our status, Williams?" The Sergeant Major consulted his tablet. "All ships report ready, ma'am. Weapons loaded, engines hot, and crews standing by for your orders. Though I have to say, the Zephyrians aren't wrong about one thing. We do look pretty rough compared to their fleet." It was true. The human task force consisted of converted cargo haulers, retrofitted mining ships, and a handful of purpose-built warships that looked like they'd been assembled in someone's garage. Which, Chen reflected, wasn't far from the truth. Humanity's rapid expansion into space had been driven more by necessity and stubborn determination than by elegant engineering. The lead Zephyrian vessel began to glow with an inner light, energy building in what were presumably its weapon systems. The effect was beautiful, like watching a star being born in the darkness of space. "Incoming transmission," Rodriguez reported. "It's a general broadcast, not directed at us." "Let's hear it," Chen said. Kethvar's voice filled the bridge, though the general wasn't addressing them directly. Instead, he was speaking to his own fleet, apparently unaware or unconcerned that the humans could intercept his communications. "Begin demonstration protocol," he commanded. "Target the lead human vessel. Minimum power settings. We want to disable, not destroy. These primitives deserve to see what real technology can accomplish before they surrender." The holographic displays around the bridge lit up as the human sensors detected massive energy buildups throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Each ship was charging weapon systems that registered power outputs equivalent to a small city's electrical grid. "Ma'am," Park called out, his voice tight with professional concern. "They're right. Our shields won't stop that kind of focused energy output. Those are fusion-powered plasma cannons, military grade. One shot from any of those ships could cut us in half." Chen watched the tactical display, noting how the enemy had positioned themselves for maximum psychological impact. The Zephyrians clearly intended to make a statement, to demonstrate the vast gulf in technological capability between their species and humanity. It was a classic example of shock and awe tactics, designed to break enemy morale before the real fighting began. "Sergeant Major," she said quietly, "are you familiar with the ancient Chinese concept of Wu Wei?" Williams raised an eyebrow. "Can't say I am, ma'am, though I'm guessing it's not a Chinese restaurant." "It means effortless action. The idea that the most effective approach is often the one that uses your opponent's strength against them." Chen turned to face her crew. "The Zephyrians have superior technology, faster ships, more powerful weapons, better coordination. In a straight fight, they would annihilate us." "So what's the plan?" Park asked. Chen smiled, that particular human smile that had been making other species nervous for generations. "We don't fight their fight. We fight ours." She activated the ship's general communication system, broadcasting to the entire human fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Chen. You are about to witness a demonstration of advanced alien technology. I want you to observe carefully and remember what you see. Pay attention to their firing patterns, their energy signatures, and their tactical deployment." The first Zephyrian ship fired. The beam that lanced across space was beautiful in its terrible precision. Pure energy made visible, it struck the UES Defiance's shields and began to burn through them with methodical efficiency. The bridge lights flickered as power systems strained to absorb the attack, and Chen could feel the deck vibrating under her feet as the ship's generators worked at maximum capacity. "Shields down to 60%, Park reported. That was just a ranging shot. If they fire at full power..." "They won't," Chen interrupted. "They want to take us intact, remember? We're primitives to be conquered and civilized, not enemies to be destroyed." The second shot followed quickly, this time from a different ship. The Zephyrians were demonstrating their coordination, showing how multiple vessels could focus fire on a single target while maintaining perfect formation. It was an impressive display of technological superiority. "Shields down to 30%, Park called out. "Commander, we need to do something." "One more hit like that and we'll be flying on atmospheric containment alone." Chen nodded. "All ships, this is Defiance. Execute Crazy Ivan." The response was immediate. Every human ship in the fleet suddenly broke formation, not with the graceful precision of the Zephyrian deployment, but with the chaotic unpredictability of a bar fight in zero gravity. Ships accelerated in random directions, some spinning on their axes, others executing violent course changes that would have been impossible for vessels with the Zephyrian sophisticated stabilization systems. To an outside observer, it looked like panic, like a primitive fleet falling apart under pressure from superior technology. "What are they doing?" came Kethvar's voice over the intercepted communications. "Have they lost control of their vessels?" Chen watched the tactical display as her ships scattered across local space like leaves in a hurricane. To the untrained eye, it was chaos. But she could see the pattern underneath. The careful positioning, the calculated trajectories, the way each ship was moving to create overlapping fields of fire while remaining too dispersed for the Zephyrians to target effectively. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said, his voice filled with professional admiration, "that's beautiful. They can't coordinate their firing solutions against targets that aren't moving predictably." "The Zephyrians are used to fighting civilized opponents," Chen explained. "Species that fight with honor and follow established tactical doctrine. They're not prepared for adversaries who refuse to play by the rules." The Zephyrian formation began to shift, trying to adapt to the new tactical situation, but their movements were constrained by their own technological sophistication. Their AI-controlled coordination system wasn't designed to handle opponents who moved like drunk pilots in a meteor shower. "Third wave incoming," Park announced. "Multiple ships targeting us directly. This time, 6 Zephyrian vessels fired in perfect synchronization." The energy beams converged on the Defiance's position with mathematical precision, more than enough to overwhelm what remained of the ship's shields. Except the Defiance wasn't there anymore. Chen had ordered a course change at the last possible moment, a maneuver that sent her ship tumbling through space in a barely controlled spin. The Zephyrian beams passed harmlessly through empty space. Their perfect coordination turned into a weakness by humanity's willingness to embrace chaos. "Now," Chen said quietly. Throughout the human fleet, weapon systems that had been quietly charging while the Zephyrians demonstrated their superiority finally reached full power. But these weren't energy weapons. They were railguns, electromagnetic launchers that could accelerate small projectiles to significant fractions of light speed using nothing more than magnetic fields and basic physics. The projectiles themselves were simple, dense metal slugs roughly the size and shape of old-fashioned artillery shells. No warheads, no exotic materials, no advanced technology, just mass times velocity equals momentum expressed in its purest form. The human ships fired. 27 railgun projectiles streaked across space at velocities that made conventional artillery look like thrown rocks. Each slug carried kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, focused into a package roughly the size of a coffee can. The Zephyrians had shields designed to deflect energy weapons. Their defensive systems could absorb, redirect, or dissipate almost any form of electromagnetic radiation. But momentum was different. Momentum was a fundamental property of matter in motion, and no amount of technological sophistication could make it simply disappear. The first projectile struck the lead Zephyrian vessel amidships, punching through its elegant shields as if they weren't there. The slug continued through the ship's hull, leaving a perfectly round hole that glowed with residual heat. It exited the other side of the ship and continued on its trajectory, carrying away a significant portion of the vessel's momentum in the process. The Zephyrian ship began to tumble. "Impossible," came Cathvar's voice over the communications channel. "Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our defenses." The second projectile answered him by tearing through the command section of his own vessel, leaving the general's ship dead in space with its primary systems offline. "All ships," Chen broadcast to her fleet, "continue evasive maneuvers and prepare for second volley. Remember, we're not trying to match their firepower, we're using physics." The human ships continued their chaotic dance through local space, never remaining in one position long enough for the Zephyrians to achieve target lock. Meanwhile, their rail guns continued to speak, each shot carefully calculated to maximize kinetic energy transfer while minimizing the number of projectiles needed. It was a masterclass in practical physics. While the Zephyrians relied on exotic energy manipulation and sophisticated technology, the humans were simply making heavy objects move very fast and then transferring that momentum to whatever happened to be in the way. The effect on enemy morale was immediate and devastating. The Zephyrians had come expecting to demonstrate their technological superiority over primitive humans. Instead, they found themselves being systematically dismantled by adversaries who apparently didn't understand that space combat was supposed to be a refined affair of energy weapons and elegant maneuvers. "Status report," Chen called out as another enemy vessel went dark after taking a railgun slug through its engineering section. 17 enemy ships disabled or destroyed, Park reported. "We've taken minor damage from their initial attack, but our evasive maneuvers are keeping us mostly out of their firing solutions." Chen nodded, watching the tactical display. The Zephyrian formation was falling apart as more ships fell victim to human kinetic weapons. Their coordination, which had been their greatest strength, was now working against them, as disabled vessels created obstacles for their own fleet. "Commander," Rodriguez called out, "we're receiving a general surrender request from the remaining Zephyrian ships." "I thought they might," Chen replied. "Put General Cathvar through." The Zephyrian commander's image appeared again, but this time he looked considerably less confident. His elegant features were strained, and there was something that might have been fear in his luminous eyes. "Commander Chen," he said, his musical voice now carrying undertones of confusion and respect, "I request a cessation of hostilities. We did not anticipate your tactical approach." "Which approach would that be, General?" Chen asked politely. "You fight without honor," Cathvar replied, though he didn't sound particularly accusatory. "Your weapons are crude, your maneuvers are unpredictable, and you refuse to engage us according to established military doctrine." Chen considered this for a moment. "General, may I ask you a question? I suppose, when your species developed energy weapons, what happened to your kinetic weapons programs? They were discontinued, of course. Why would we continue developing primitive projectile weapons when we had access to pure energy manipulation?" "Because," Chen said, "sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. Your energy weapons are impressive, but they're still bound by the same physical laws that govern everything else in the universe. Energy can be absorbed, deflected, or dissipated. But momentum is forever." She gestured toward the tactical display where the scattered remains of the Zephyrian fleet were struggling to regroup. "You brought sophisticated tools to a simple problem, General." "We brought simple tools to a sophisticated problem. Turns out, our approach was more effective." The general was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical situation. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. "How did you know our shields could not stop kinetic weapons?" "We didn't," Chen admitted. But we figured that any species advanced enough to build pure energy weapons probably hadn't worried about physical projectiles for a very long time. It was an educated guess based on technological development patterns. A guess? Kethvar repeated slowly. You risked your entire fleet on a guess? General, Sergeant Major Williams interjected, speaking for the first time during the engagement. With all due respect, sir, that's pretty much how humans do everything. We guess, we test, we adapt, and we keep guessing until we find something that works. Chen smiled. The Sergeant Major is correct. We're not the most advanced species in the galaxy, and we're probably not the smartest. But we are, without question, the most stubborn. And sometimes, stubborn wins. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 47 hours after news of the human victory reached the homeworlds. Council Chamber 7, with its soaring crystalline architecture and gravity-defying platforms, had witnessed many historic moments in galactic civilization, but none quite like this. Ambassador Telani of the Hegemony floated in her biosuspension tank, her translucent form rippling with what experienced diplomats recognized as severe agitation. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species maintained the careful silence that preceded either breakthrough negotiations or spectacular diplomatic disasters. The implications are disturbing. Telani's synthesized voice carried across the chamber through the universal translation matrix. The Zephyrian Empire possessed the most advanced military technology in known space. Their defeat by chemical projectiles suggests either a fundamental flaw in our understanding of modern warfare or a deliberate deception by the human delegation. High Counselor Vrain of the Serenity Worlds leaned forward on his meditation platform, his crystalline features catching the ambient light. Ambassador Telani, with respect, the humans were transparent about their military capabilities during the admission process. Our own analysts reviewed their weapons technology and concluded it was primitive but functional. Primitive? Spat Trade Minister Gorks, his massive form causing the reinforced platform to creak under his weight. They destroyed 17 ships with rocks fired from magnetic slings. How is that primitive? Because, interrupted Doctor. Saracen, no relation to the fleet commander despite the shared surname. It is primitive. Fundamentally, beautifully primitive. The human scientific advisor rose from her position at the observer's section, her simple uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by most other delegates. Counselor Vrain gestured for her to continue. Please explain, Dr. Chen. Every species in this chamber has followed the same technological development path, Chen began, activating a holographic projector that displayed a three-dimensional chart. First chemical weapons, then kinetic weapons, then energy weapons, and finally, exotic matter manipulation. Each step represents an increase in complexity and sophistication. The hologram showed the progression clearly, simple arrows representing projectiles, then beams of light for energy weapons, then abstract geometric forms representing technologies that defied easy visualization. The assumption, Chen continued, is that newer technology is inherently superior to older technology, but that assumption ignores a fundamental principle. Efficiency is measured not by complexity, but by effectiveness relative to cost and circumstances. Ambassador Telani's form pulsed with skeptical colors. Are you suggesting that inferior technology can be superior? I'm suggesting that technological advancement creates blind spots, Chen replied. When your species developed energy shields capable of stopping plasma weapons, did you continue to test them against simple kinetic projectiles? The silence that followed was telling. Around the chamber, delegates began to shift uncomfortably as they realized the implications of the question. The Zephyrians made the same mistake every advanced species makes, Chen explained. They prepared for the last war, not the current one. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons because energy weapons represented the pinnacle of military technology. Nobody thought to test them against a chunk of metal moving at 20% of light speed. High Counselor Vrain's crystalline features seemed to dim. This suggests that our entire understanding of military doctrine may be flawed. Not flawed, Chen corrected. Incomplete. You've been fighting each other for so long using similar technologies that you've forgotten how to think outside established paradigms. Humans, on the other hand, are relative newcomers to advanced technology. We still remember how things worked before we had access to fusion reactors and exotic materials. Trade Minister Gork slammed a massive fist against his platform, causing several nearby delegates to flinch. This is intolerable. The humans have upset the entire balance of power through deliberate primitivism. It's not deliberate, Chen said patiently. It's practical. Human space is young and resource-poor compared to established galactic territories. We can't afford to build ships out of metamaterials and exotic alloys. We have to use steel, aluminum, and titanium, the same materials our ancestors used for everything from buildings to bicycles. But your weapons, began Ambassador Telani. Our railguns? Chen interrupted. Electromagnetic launchers based on principles discovered by human scientists over 4 centuries ago. The only innovation is in the materials and power systems. The basic concept hasn't changed. Use magnetic fields to accelerate a projectile to high velocity, then let momentum do the rest. She manipulated the holographic display to show a cutaway view of a human railgun. The design was remarkably simple, a series of electromagnetic coils arranged along a linear track, with power systems that looked almost crude compared to the elegant fusion reactors used by more advanced species. The beauty of kinetic weapons, Chen explained, is that they scale remarkably well. Double the power input, and you get significantly more than double the kinetic energy output. Triple the mass of the projectile, and you triple the momentum transfer. It's basic physics applied with engineering efficiency. Around the chamber, military advisors were frantically consulting portable computers, no doubt running calculations based on this new information. The results appeared to be uniformly disturbing, judging by the expressions on their various faces, tentacles, and other physiological features. Dr. Chen, Counselor Vrain said carefully, are you telling us that humans can defeat any energy shield-equipped vessel using kinetic weapons? I'm telling you that kinetic weapons represent a significant tactical advantage against defenses designed primarily to stop energy weapons, Chen replied. But only if used correctly. The key is not just the weapon itself, but how it's employed. She changed the holographic display to show the tactical situation from the recent battle. The chaotic movement patterns of the human fleet were clearly visible, contrasted against the precise formations of the Zephyrian ships. The Zephyrians fought according to established doctrine, Chen explained. They maintained formation, coordinated their movements through centralized control, and attempted to demonstrate their superiority through overwhelming technological advantage. Classic shock and awe tactics. And the human response? Asked Ambassador Telani. Chaos theory applied to military tactics, Chen said with evident satisfaction. Our ships moved unpredictably, making it impossible for enemy targeting systems to achieve reliable firing solutions. We didn't try to match their technological sophistication. We made it irrelevant. Trade Minister Gorks leaned forward, his massive bulk shifting on the platform. But surely this is a temporary advantage. Once other species adapt their defenses to account for kinetic weapons, they'll create new vulnerabilities that humans will find ways to exploit, Chen interrupted. That's what humans do. We adapt, improvise, and overcome. When you close one tactical avenue, we'll find another. Through what means? Counsel Vrain asked. Chen smiled, that peculiar human expression that had been making other species nervous for generations. Through creativity, stubbornness, and a complete willingness to ignore conventional wisdom when it doesn't serve our purposes. She activated a new section of the holographic display, showing human weapon development programs. The images were disturbing in their variety. Kinetic weapons, yes, but also fusion rockets that could be repurposed as weapons, mining equipment modified for military use, and industrial fabrication systems that could be quickly converted to armament production. Humans don't separate military and civilian technology the way most species do, Chen explained. Our mining ships can become battleships. Our cargo haulers can carry kinetic weapons. Our industrial infrastructure can switch from building tractors to building tanks in a matter of weeks. Total war capability, whispered someone in the chamber. Distributed war capability, Chen corrected. Every human colony, every space station, every asteroid mining operation has the potential to become a military asset. We don't need dedicated military shipyards or specialized weapon manufacturing facilities. We just need time to modify what we already have. The implications of this were clearly dawning on the assembled delegates. A species that could turn its entire industrial base into military production on short notice represented a threat unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. But surely, Ambassador Telani said, her form now pulsing with alarm colors, this level of militarization is incompatible with civilized society. On the contrary, Chen replied, it's a natural result of human social evolution. We come from a world where survival required adaptability and resource efficiency. Those traits don't disappear just because we've gained access to fusion power and faster-than-light travel. She gestured toward the holographic display, which now showed human civilian infrastructure. every human settlement is designed for self-sufficiency and rapid adaptation to changing circumstances. It's not militarization, it's practical engineering applied to the realities of living in a dangerous universe. High Counselor Vrain was quiet for a long moment, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights as he processed this information. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of diplomatic experience. Dr. Chen, what are humanity's intentions regarding galactic politics? Your species has demonstrated capabilities that could destabilize existing power structures. Our intentions are simple, Chen replied. We want to trade, explore, learn, and be left alone to develop our own territories. We have no interest in conquest or domination. But we also have no intention of being conquered or dominated by others, even if those others possess superior technology, asked Trade Minister Gorks. Especially if they possess superior technology, Chen said firmly. Human history is full of examples of technologically superior forces being defeated by opponents who refuse to play by established rules. We're very good at asymmetric warfare. She manipulated the display again, showing historical examples of human conflicts. The images were disturbing, not because of their violence, but because of their creativity. Humans had found ways to defeat superior opponents through tactics that ranged from brilliant to borderline insane. The Zephyrian Empire learned something important, Chen continued. Superior technology is meaningless if your opponent refuses to engage you on technological terms. If they fight using tactics and weapons you haven't prepared for, your advantages become irrelevant. And if other species adapt? Counselor Vrain asked. If they develop countermeasures to human tactics? Chen's smile broadened. Then we'll adapt too. That's what humans do best. We change, we evolve, and we find new ways to solve old problems. The galaxy is about to discover what it means to deal with a species that treats every challenge as an engineering problem, waiting for a creative solution. Around the chamber, delegates were beginning to understand the true implications of humanity's admission to the Galactic Council. They weren't dealing with just another spacefaring species. They were dealing with a species that approached warfare the same way they approached everything else, with boundless creativity, stubborn determination, and a complete willingness to ignore conventional wisdom. The balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for millennia was about to shift, not because humans were more advanced than other species, but because they were more adaptable. And in a universe where technological advancement had begun to stagnate, adaptability might be the most powerful weapon of all. I have one final question, Ambassador Talani said, her form now pulsing with colors that indicated deep thought. What happens when humanity's technology does catch up to the rest of the galaxy? When you have access to the same advanced materials and energy systems that other species possess? Chen considered this for a moment, then activated one final holographic display. It showed theoretical human weapon designs, railguns powered by exotic matter, kinetic projectiles made from materials that didn't currently exist, and delivery systems that combined human tactical thinking with advanced galactic technology. Ambassador, Chen said quietly, I really hope you never have to find out. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood in the command center of Fortress Europa, humanity's newest and most ambitious military installation, watching real-time tactical displays that would have been impossible to imagine just 5 years earlier. The fortress itself was a testament to human adaptability, a converted asteroid that had been hollowed out, reinforced, and equipped with enough firepower to make entire fleets think twice about approaching human space. Sir, reported Captain Lisa Park, recently promoted after her service at the Battle of Proxima, we're receiving movement reports from our early warning network. Multiple fleets are approaching human territorial boundaries. Rivera nodded grimly. The victory over the Zephyrians had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and not all of them were positive. While some species had approached humanity with renewed respect and interest in trade agreements, others had apparently decided that the human threat needed to be eliminated before it could grow larger. How many fleets are we talking about, Captain? 17 confirmed battle groups from 12 different species, Park replied, consulting her tactical display. They're not coordinating their approach times, which suggests this isn't a formal alliance. More likely, each species has independently decided that humanity represents an unacceptable threat to galactic stability. Independently, Rivera mused. Or they're trying to make it look independent while actually following a coordinated plan. Either way, we're looking at the largest military response in recorded galactic history. Through the command center's massive transparent aluminum windows, Rivera could see the human defensive preparations. Ships that had once been cargo haulers were now bristling with railgun batteries. Mining platforms had been converted into weapon fabrication centers, And, throughout the asteroid belt, construction crews were working around the clock to complete defensive installations that looked more like industrial facilities than traditional fortifications. What's the status of Project Momentum? Rivera asked. Captain Park's expression brightened slightly. All primary installations are operational, sir. The outer ring is 93% complete, and we've successfully tested the delivery systems at ranges up to 2 light hours. Dr. Singh's team has exceeded all performance projections. Rivera allowed himself a small smile. Dr. Rajesh Singh, humanity's leading expert in large-scale kinetic engineering, had spent the months since the Zephyrian encounter developing what he called scaled solutions to scaled problems. The results were impressive, if somewhat terrifying. And our allies? The hegemony has provided material support but declined to commit military forces, Park reported. The Serenity Worlds are maintaining neutral observer status. The Traders Guild has offered to facilitate negotiations but won't take sides in what they're calling a restructuring of galactic power dynamics. In other words, we're on our own, Rivera said. Just like always. Yes, sir. Though intelligence reports that several species are watching the situation very carefully. How we handle this will determine whether humanity is viewed as a legitimate galactic power or a dangerous anomaly that needs to be contained. Rivera turned his attention to the tactical displays. The approaching fleets represented the finest military technology the galaxy had to offer. The Coraxis Dominion had sent their newest dreadnoughts, equipped with quantum disruptors that could theoretically tear apart matter at the subatomic level. The Ethereal Consortium had deployed their psychic amplifier ships, designed to overwhelm enemy crews with telepathic attacks. The Synthetic Collective had contributed a fleet of fully automated vessels that could coordinate their actions with perfect precision. Each fleet alone would have been a significant challenge for human forces. Together, they represented overwhelming superiority in numbers, technology, and firepower. On paper, humanity didn't have a chance. Sir, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from the communication station, we're receiving a joint transmission from the approaching fleets. They're requesting to speak with our senior commander. Put them through, Rivera said. The holographic display activated, showing not one but 3 alien commanders. Apparently, the fleets had elected representatives to speak for their coalition. Rivera recognized Fleet Commander Thax of the Coraxis Dominion, his reptilian features scarred by countless battles. The second speaker was Harmony Singer Vale from the Ethereal Consortium, her translucent form shifting between visible and invisible as her emotions changed. The third was Processing Unit 7743 from the Synthetic Collective, a crystalline construct that processed information faster than biological minds could follow. Admiral Rivera, Fleet Commander Thax began, his translated voice carrying the authority of centuries of military command. I am authorized to speak for the assembled fleets. We have come to discuss the human threat to galactic stability. Threat? Rivera replied mildly. That's an interesting choice of words, Commander. We've been defending our own territory against unprovoked aggression. How does that constitute a threat? Your tactics, interjected Harmony Singer Vale, her form flickering with colors that suggested agitation, violate established military conventions. You fight without honor, using primitive weapons against advanced defenses. This creates uncertainty. Processing Unit 70743 added its input with mechanical precision. Analysis indicates that human military doctrine introduces unpredictable variables into galactic conflict modeling. This reduces strategic stability and increases the probability of cascade failures in existing power structures. Rivera nodded thoughtfully. So you're saying that because we don't fight the way you expect, we're destabilizing the galaxy? Precisely, Fleet Commander Thax confirmed. The Galactic Council has maintained peace for over 2,000 years through careful balance of power and established military doctrine. Your species threatens that balance. And your solution is to eliminate the threat, Rivera said. It wasn't a question. We prefer to think of it as restoring stability, Harmony Singer Vale replied. Your species will be offered the opportunity to accept protectorate status under joint galactic supervision. Your military capabilities will be limited to system defense, and your weapons technology will be regulated to prevent further disruption of galactic military doctrine. In other words, Rivera said, surrender or be destroyed. Essentially correct. Processing Unit 7743 confirmed. Though destruction is not the preferred outcome. Your species has demonstrated useful capabilities that could benefit galactic civilization if properly directed. Rivera was quiet for a moment, studying the 3 commanders. They were, he realized, completely sincere. From their perspective, humanity represented a dangerous anomaly that needed to be contained for the greater good of galactic civilization. They weren't acting out of malice or conquest. They genuinely believed they were preserving peace. Which, unfortunately, didn't make them any less dangerous. "Commanders," Rivera said finally, "I appreciate your honesty, but I'm afraid I have to decline your offer." "Admiral," Fleet Commander Thax said with what sounded like genuine regret, "our combined fleets possess firepower equivalent to a medium star. We have ships that can manipulate matter at the quantum level, weapons that can affect targets through dimensional space, and coordination systems that make tactical surprise virtually impossible. What makes you think you can resist this force?" Rivera smiled. "Because you're still thinking like advanced species fighting other advanced species. You're preparing for a conventional engagement using conventional tactics. And humans are not conventional," Processing Unit 7743 observed. "No," Rivera agreed. "We're not. Captain Park, would you show our guests the current status of Project Momentum?" Park activated the external sensor displays, showing the space around Fortress Europa and the broader human defensive network. At first glance, everything looked normal. A scattering of human installations throughout the asteroid belt, mining operations, and defensive platforms. But as the display zoomed in, the true nature of the human preparations became clear. What had appeared to be mining operations were actually massive kinetic launchers. The asteroid mining platforms had been converted into projectile manufacturing centers. And throughout the belt, thousands of small objects that looked like space debris were actually guided kinetic projectiles waiting for activation. "My God," Harmony Singervale whispered, her form flickering through a spectrum of alarm colors. "You've turned your entire system into a weapon." "Not a weapon," Rivera corrected. "A demonstration of applied physics on a stellar scale." "Dr. Singh, would you care to explain?" Dr. Singh's image appeared on a secondary display, the elderly physicist looking pleased with his work. "Certainly, Admiral. Gentlemen, ladies in Processing Unit 7743, what you're seeing is the logical extension of human kinetic weapon technology. Instead of firing projectiles from individual ships, we've created a system that can launch kinetic interceptors from any point in the system." He manipulated the display to show the mathematical calculations behind the project. Each launcher is capable of accelerating a 1-ton projectile to approximately 30% of light speed. We have over 1,500 launchers positioned throughout the asteroid belt, plus mobile platforms that can be repositioned as needed. Fleet Commander Thax studied the display with professional interest. "Impressive, but kinetic weapons require line-of-sight targeting. Our ships can maneuver to avoid predictable trajectories." "That's true, Doctor," Singh agreed cheerfully, "which is why we didn't make the trajectories predictable. Each projectile is equipped with a small fusion engine and basic AI guidance system. They can adjust their course after launch to compensate for evasive maneuvers." "Smart bullets," Processing Unit 7-743 said, its mechanical voice carrying what might have been surprise. "Smart bullets fired from a gun the size of a solar system," Rivera confirmed. "But that's not the really interesting part. Dr. Singh, show them the cascade effect." The display changed to show a simulation of the weapon system in operation. Projectiles launched from multiple points throughout the asteroid belt, their trajectories converging on target areas with mathematical precision. But as the simulation continued, the projectiles began to affect each other's paths, creating a complex web of gravitational interactions that turned the entire inner system into a three-dimensional artillery barrage. "Each projectile creates gravitational effects that influence the others," Dr. Barrow, Singh explained. "The result is a targeting system that becomes more accurate as more projectiles are fired. Your ship's evasive maneuvers will actually help us predict where you'll be when the next wave arrives." Harmony Singervale was now pulsing with colors that indicated severe distress. "This violates every principle of civilized warfare." "You're turning space itself into a battlefield." "Space has always been a battlefield," Rivera replied. "We're just the first species to think of it in those terms." "The fleets are impressive, commanders, but they're designed to fight other fleets in contained engagements. They're not designed to fight an entire star system that's been converted into a weapon." "You're bluffing," Fleet Commander Thax said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No species has ever attempted military engineering on this scale." "No advanced species has ever attempted it," Rivera corrected. "But humans aren't advanced in the conventional sense. We're practical. When we have a problem, we build a solution. When that solution isn't big enough, we build a bigger one." Processing Unit 7743 processed this information with mechanical efficiency. Probability analysis indicates that human defensive capabilities exceed our offensive capabilities by a significant margin. Recommended course of action, withdraw and reassess. I disagree, Fleet Commander Thax said firmly. We have quantum disruptors that can tear apart matter at the subatomic level. No kinetic defense can stop that. You're right, Rivera agreed, but quantum disruptors require close range to be effective. How close can you get to our defensive perimeter before you start taking casualties? The question hung in space between the two forces. The alien commanders had assumed they would be fighting ships, not an entire stellar defensive network. Their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not for engaging targets scattered across billions of cubic kilometers of space. Admiral, Dr. Singh added helpfully, perhaps you should mention the other surprise we've prepared. Rivera's smile broadened. Ah, yes. Commanders, you should know that while you've been approaching our system, we've been tracking your fleets with our own mobile units. Small ships, mostly converted cargo haulers, nothing that would show up as a significant threat on your sensors. And, Harmony Singer-Vale asked, though her form was already beginning to shift toward colors associated with impending doom. And those ships have been deploying kinetic mines along your approach vectors. Simple devices, really, just gravity sensors linked to kinetic launchers. They activate when they detect the mass signature of a capital ship. The tactical display updated to show the positions of the alien fleets relative to the human mine network. Each fleet was surrounded by a cloud of small objects that hadn't been there when they started their approach. Retroactive area denial. Processing Unit 7740 observed. Elegant solution. Thank you, Rivera said. We thought so too. The beauty of kinetic weapons is that they're very hard to detect when they're not moving. A chunk of metal drifting in space looks like space debris until it starts accelerating toward your ship. Fleet Commander Thax was studying the tactical situation with the expression of a professional soldier who had just realized he'd walked into a trap. How many mines? Enough, Rivera replied, though I should point out that this isn't a trap exactly. You're free to leave whenever you want. The mines are programmed to ignore ships moving away from human space. The three alien commanders exchanged glances, or the equivalent in Processing Unit 7743's case. They had come expecting to overwhelm human defenses through superior technology and numerical advantage. Instead, they found themselves facing a defensive network that turned their strengths into weaknesses and used the vastness of space itself as a weapon. This changes the entire strategic equation, Harmony Singer-Vale said finally. If humans can defend their territory using these methods, then the age of conventional galactic warfare is over, Rivera finished. And that's exactly the point, Commanders. We're not trying to conquer the galaxy. We're just trying to make it clear that conquering us isn't worth the cost. 6 months after the standoff at Sol, as galactic historians were already calling it, Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the newly constructed human embassy on Nexus Prime, the diplomatic heart of galactic civilization. Through the massive viewing ports, she could see the extraordinary diversity of galactic species going about their daily business, but the atmosphere was noticeably different from her previous visits, where once humans had been curiosities, primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. They were now treated with a mixture of respect, wariness, and intense scientific interest. The change was most obvious in the security arrangements. Human diplomatic quarters were the only ones equipped with kinetic shielding, and their ships were given priority clearance through all space traffic control zones. Ambassador, reported her aide, Lieutenant Daniel Torres, the morning briefings are ready. We have 17 new trade proposals, 43 requests for military technology exchanges, and 6 marriage proposals from various species requesting genetic compatibility studies.
Vasquez raised an eyebrow.
Marriage proposals? Apparently, some species find human unpredictability to be an attractive trait for improving their genetic diversity, Torres explained with a carefully neutral expression. The Ethereal Consortium is particularly interested in what they call creative chaos genetics. File those under interesting but impractical, Vasquez said dryly. What about the technology exchange requests? Those are more serious. The Core Axis Dominion wants to license human railgun technology for mining operations. The Synthetic Collective is offering advanced AI systems in exchange for what they call human intuitive programming methodologies. And the Zephyrian Empire, Torres paused, consulting his notes. The Zephyrians are requesting a complete review of their military doctrine. They want human advisors to help them develop what they're calling asymmetric defensive strategies. Vasquez considered this. The Zephyrians had been surprisingly gracious in defeat, treating their military humiliation as a learning opportunity rather than a cause for revenge. It was, she reflected, a very civilized response to being outfought by primitives with rocks. Schedule meetings with all the serious inquiries, she decided, but make sure our people understand that we're not sharing anything that could be used against us later. Human technology stays human until we're certain about long-term intentions. Understood. There's one more item on the agenda that you should see personally. Torres activated the holographic display showing a real-time tactical plot of local space around Nexus Prime. At first, everything appeared normal. The usual traffic of diplomatic vessels, trade ships, and local security patrols. But as Vasquez studied the display more carefully, she began to notice anomalies. Small objects moving in seemingly random patterns, their trajectories following paths that made no sense for normal civilian traffic. "Torres," she said slowly, "are those human cargo ships?" "Yes, ma'am." "But not ordinary ones." Torres highlighted several of the vessels, showing their modified configurations. Intelligence reports that Earth Central has been very busy since the standoff. These ships have been appearing at strategic locations throughout galactic space over the past few weeks. Vasquez studied the display with growing understanding. The ships weren't randomly positioned. They were creating a network, a web of potential kinetic weapons platforms that could strike targets anywhere in civilized space within hours of receiving orders. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Current count is over 200 confirmed vessels, with more being spotted every day," Torres replied. "They're all officially registered as independent cargo haulers or commercial mining operations, but their engine signatures and trajectory patterns suggest they're part of a coordinated network." "A very large network," Vasquez murmured. She activated the communications system. "Get me Admiral Rivera. Encrypted channel, priority 1. The Admiral's image appeared within moments, his face showing the controlled exhaustion of someone managing a complex military operation. Behind him, Vasquez could see the familiar displays of Fortress Europa's command center. "Ambassador," Rivera said by way of greeting, "I assume you're calling about our cargo fleet?" "Admiral, please tell me we haven't just militarized half the commercial shipping in the galaxy." Rivera's expression didn't change. "We've positioned strategic assets to ensure rapid response capability in case of renewed hostile action. All operations are being conducted within legal parameters as defined by galactic commercial law." Which is a very diplomatic way of saying, yes, we've militarized half the commercial shipping in the galaxy, Vasquez said. "Admiral, do you understand the diplomatic implications of what you're doing?" "I understand that 6 months ago, 17 separate fleets tried to destroy human civilization," Rivera replied. "I also understand that those fleets withdrew not because they changed their minds about the threat we represent, but because the cost of eliminating us became prohibitive." He manipulated something off-screen, and the tactical display updated to show additional information. "Ambassador, our intelligence networks report that at least 6 of those species are actively developing countermeasures to kinetic weapons. The synthetic collective has created new shield configurations that might stop projectiles moving at sublight speeds. The Caraxes Dominion is working on point defense systems designed specifically to intercept railgun slugs." Vasquez felt a chill of recognition. "They're adapting." "Exactly. And when they finish adapting, they'll be back. Except next time, they'll come prepared for the tactics we used at Sol. We need to be prepared for that." "So you've created a galactic network of mobile kinetic platforms," Vasquez said. "Admiral, that's either brilliant strategy or a recipe for disaster." "Possibly both. It's insurance," Rivera said firmly. "If hostile forces threaten human space again, they'll discover that we can strike back anywhere in the galaxy within hours. No species is safe from kinetic weapons if we decide they represent an existential threat to humanity." Vasquez was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical implications. Rivera was right about the strategic value of the network, but he was also creating a situation that could spiral out of control very quickly. "Admiral," she said finally, "what happens when the other species figure out what we're doing, when they realize that we've basically turned every human commercial ship into a potential weapon?" "Then they'll have to decide whether challenging humanity is worth the risk of having kinetic projectiles raining down on their homeworlds," Rivera replied. "It's called deterrence, Ambassador, the same principle that kept human nations from destroying each other with nuclear weapons back on Earth. Mutually assured destruction," Vasquez said. "Except in this case, it's mutually assured momentum transfer." "I like that," Rivera said with the first smile she'd seen from him all day. "Ma'am T has a nice ring to it." Before Vasquez could respond, Lieutenant Torres interrupted with an urgent expression. "Ambassador, We're receiving an emergency broadcast from the Galactic Council. They're calling an immediate session to address what they're calling unprecedented developments in human military positioning. They know, Vasquez said. Apparently so, Rivera agreed. The question is, what are they going to do about it? 3 hours later, Vasquez found herself back in Council Chamber 7, facing an assembly of galactic representatives who looked considerably more agitated than she'd ever seen them. The chamber's normally serene atmosphere was charged with tension, and several delegates were engaged in heated discussions that the Universal Translation System was having trouble parsing. "Order!" called High Counselor Vrain, his crystalline features radiating authority. This emergency session will address recent developments in human military deployment strategies. Ambassador Telani of the Hegemony activated her holographic display without preamble, showing a galaxy-wide plot of human commercial ship positions. The pattern was unmistakable, a network of vessels positioned at strategic locations throughout civilized space. "Fellow delegates," Telani said, her form pulsing with agitation colors, "humanity has deployed what can only be described as a galaxy-spanning weapons network. They have positioned kinetic weapons platforms throughout our space under the guise of commercial operations." "With respect," Vasquez interrupted, rising from her position, "those are legitimate commercial vessels engaged in legal trading operations. The fact that they could theoretically be repurposed for military use doesn't make them weapons platforms." "Theoretically?" Trade Minister Gorks slammed his massive fist against his platform. "Ambassador, those ships carry railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed." "How is that theoretical?" "Because railguns are also useful for mining operations, cargo handling, and asteroid processing," Vasquez replied calmly. "The same technology that can launch a kinetic weapon can also move freight containers or break up asteroids for mineral extraction." High Counselor Vrain leaned forward. "Ambassador Vasquez, are you telling this council that these vessels have no military capability?" "I'm telling this council that dual-use technology is a reality of modern galactic civilization," Vasquez said. "Every fusion reactor can be used to power a weapons system. Every gravity manipulator can be used to create tactical effects. The difference lies in intent and deployment." She activated her own holographic display, showing human commercial operations throughout the galaxy. These ships are engaged in legitimate trade. They're hauling cargo, processing asteroids, and providing transportation services to dozens of species. The fact that they also represent a defensive capability is incidental. Incidental, repeated Processing Unit 7743 from the Synthetic Collective. "Analysis indicates that the positioning of these vessels creates optimal coverage for kinetic bombardment of all major population centers in galactic civilization." "Analysis also indicates," Vasquez replied, "that those same positions provide optimal coverage for rapid cargo delivery, emergency assistance, and commercial services to all major population centers in galactic civilization. Intent matters, Processing Unit 7743. Around the chamber, delegates were beginning to understand the elegant simplicity of what humanity had done. By positioning commercial vessels with dual-use technology throughout galactic space, they had created a deterrent network that was nearly impossible to challenge through legal or military means. "This is intolerable," declared Fleet Commander Thax of the Coraxis Dominion. "Humanity has effectively held the entire galaxy hostage using commercial shipping regulations." "Commander," Vasquez said politely, "no one is holding anyone hostage. These ships are engaged in peaceful commerce. They will continue to be engaged in peaceful commerce as long as no one tries to destroy human civilization." "And if someone does?" asked Harmony Singer Vale of the Ethereal Consortium. Vasquez smiled that particular human smile that had been making other species nervous for the past year. "Then those commercial vessels might discover that their cargo handling equipment has unexpected capabilities." High Counselor Vrain was quiet for a long moment, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights as he processed the situation. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia of diplomatic experience. "Ambassador Vasquez, what are humanity's terms?" "Terms for what, Counselor?" "For not using this network to dominate galactic civilization." Vasquez considered the question carefully. "I would be so happy. This was the moment that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. The wrong answer could trigger another war. The right answer might establish a lasting peace." "Counselor," she said finally, "humanity's terms are exactly what they've always been. We want to trade, explore, learn, and be left alone to develop our own territories. We have no interest in conquest or domination." "But you reserve the right to defend yourselves using any means necessary," Vrain observed. "We reserve the right to survive," Vasquez corrected. If that requires unconventional tactics or asymmetric strategies, then that's what we'll use. But we have no desire to rule the galaxy. We just want to make sure the galaxy doesn't rule us. Ambassador Talani's form shifted to colors indicating deep thought. And if other species develop countermeasures to your kinetic weapons, if they find ways to neutralize your defensive advantages, then we'll develop new tactics, Vasquez said simply. That's what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome. The specific technology isn't important. What matters is our willingness to think differently about problems that everyone else considers solved. Around the chamber, delegates were beginning to realize that they were witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic politics. For millennia, peace had been maintained through careful balance between species with similar capabilities and similar approaches to warfare. Now they were dealing with a species that refused to accept established limitations. This council, High Council Vrain announced, will recess for deliberation. When we reconvene, we will discuss new frameworks for galactic security that account for innovative approaches to deterrence. As the session ended and delegates began to file out of the chamber, Vasquez reflected on what had just occurred. Humanity had just announced to the galaxy that they were prepared to defend themselves using whatever methods proved necessary. The response would determine whether the next chapter of galactic history would be written in cooperation or conflict. But either way, it would be written on human terms. 10 years had passed since humanity's introduction to galactic civilization, and the changes were evident everywhere. In the sprawling marketplace of Nexus Prime, human merchants sold everything from simple tools to complex industrial equipment alongside traders from dozens of other species. What made the scene remarkable wasn't the diversity that had always existed, but the subtle ways that human influence had reshaped galactic commerce. Dr. Sarah Chen, now Director of Interspecies Technology Assessment, walked through the commercial district with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The humans she passed looked comfortable and confident, no longer the nervous newcomers they'd been a decade ago. More importantly, the aliens she encountered treated humans with genuine respect rather than condescending tolerance. Director Chen called a familiar voice. She turned to see Trade Minister Gorks approaching, his massive form moving with surprising grace through the crowded marketplace. I was hoping to encounter you. There are developments you should be aware of. Good developments or concerning developments? Chen asked. That depends on your perspective, Gorks replied with what might have been amusement. Come, let me show you something interesting. He led her to a viewing platform that overlooked the main commercial docking area. Below them, ships from across the galaxy were loading and unloading cargo, with the controlled chaos that characterized any major trade hub. But as Chen studied the activity more carefully, she began to notice patterns that hadn't been there during her previous visits. The Zephyrian ships, she said slowly. Are they? Using human-designed railguns for cargo handling, yes, Gorks confirmed. Also for asteroid mining, debris clearing, and what they diplomatically called defensive applications. Chen watched as a sleek Zephyrian vessel used its railgun system to launch cargo containers toward a waiting station with precision that would have been impossible using conventional propulsion. The efficiency was remarkable, and the military implications were obvious. How many species have adopted kinetic technology, she asked. Openly, 17 major civilizations and 43 minor ones, Gorks replied.
Unofficially?
Everyone. The Synthetic Collective has integrated kinetic weapons into their ship designs. The Ethereal Consortium has developed psychically guided projectile systems. Even my own people have begun experimenting with mass drivers for mining operations. And the Galactic Council's response to this... proliferation? Gork's expression shifted to what Chen had learned to recognize as the alien equivalent of resigned amusement. The Council has officially endorsed what they're calling technological diversity in defensive systems. Unofficially, they're terrified that your species has fundamentally altered the balance of power in ways they don't fully understand. They walked to another section of the platform, where Chen could see a different type of activity. Human ships were docked alongside alien vessels, but instead of simply trading cargo, crews from both species appeared to be working together on complex modifications and upgrades. Technology transfer programs? Chen asked. More than that, Gork said. Joint development projects. The Caraxes Dominion is working with human engineers to create hybrid weapon systems that combine their quantum disruptors with kinetic delivery platforms. The results are impressive. He activated a portable holographic display showing test footage of the hybrid weapons in action. The sight was disturbing. Projectiles that phased through conventional shields before solidifying to deliver kinetic impact, combining the best features of both technologies. My God, Chen murmured. That's not just adoption of human technology. That's evolution. Precisely. Your species didn't just introduce new weapons to galactic civilization. You introduced a new way of thinking about weapons. And now everyone is thinking that way. Chen considered the implications. Humanity's tactical advantages had always been based on other species' unwillingness to abandon sophisticated technology in favor of simpler solutions. But if every species in the galaxy started thinking like humans, Director Chen, Gorks continued, there's something else you need to see, something that illustrates just how thoroughly your species has changed galactic civilization. He led her to a secure viewing chamber that overlooked a restricted section of the docking area. Through reinforced transparent aluminum, Chen could see a construction project unlike anything she'd ever encountered. Ships from dozens of different species were working together to build something that defied easy categorization. What is that? She asked. The first galactic kinetic defense platform, Gorks explained. A joint project designed to protect civilized space from external threats. Notice the design philosophy. Chen studied the construction more carefully. The platform wasn't sleek or elegant like traditional galactic architecture. Instead, it looked like something humans might have built. Functional, robust, and bristling with weapon systems that emphasized firepower over aesthetic appeal. It's based on human engineering principles, she realized. Entirely. Distributed weapon systems, redundant armor, modular construction that allows for rapid modification and repair. The design team included engineers from every major species, but the fundamental approach is purely human. And the Galactic Council approved this? Unanimously. Because last month, our long-range sensors detected something approaching from outside galactic space. Something that appears to be artificial and very, very large.
Chen felt a chill of recognition.
An external threat. Exactly. And when faced with the possibility of invasion by unknown forces, every species in the galaxy independently reached the same conclusion. They wanted weapons built using human design principles. Gorks activated another section of the holographic display showing long-range sensor data from the galactic periphery. The object approaching civilized space was massive, easily the size of a small moon, and its trajectory suggested intelligence rather than natural movement. Current estimates suggest first contact will occur in approximately 18 months, Gorks continued. Whatever is approaching us possesses technology that makes our most advanced systems look primitive. Energy signatures that don't match any known propulsion system, structural materials that seem to ignore basic physics, and construction techniques that suggest a completely different approach to engineering. So the galaxy is preparing for war using human tactics, Chen said. The galaxy is preparing for survival using the most effective tactics available, Gorks corrected, which happen to be human tactics. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the construction activity below. Chen reflected on the irony of the situation. Humanity had been dismissed as primitive when they first joined galactic civilization, but now their approach to problem-solving had become the standard for defending that same civilization. Director Chen, Gork said finally, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. When your species first encountered the Zephyrians, when you chose to fight using kinetic weapons instead of trying to match their energy technology, was that a deliberate tactical decision, or are you simply using what you had available? Minister, that's the wrong question. How so? You're assuming there's a difference between deliberate tactical decisions and using what's available? From a human perspective, they're the same thing. We use whatever works, regardless of whether it's sophisticated or primitive, elegant or crude. She gestured toward the construction project below. Look at that platform. It incorporates advanced materials from the hegemony, AI systems from the synthetic collective, and energy weapons from the Zephyrians. But the basic design philosophy, build it tough, build it functional, and mount enough firepower to make enemies think twice about attacking. That's pure human thinking. And now it's galactic thinking, Gorks observed. Because it works. When faced with unknown threats, sophistication becomes less important than effectiveness. And humans have always been very good at being effective. The viewing chamber's communication system activated, and Chen recognized the voice of Admiral Rivera, now commanding the Joint Galactic Defense Forces. Director Chen, please report to Defense Command. We're receiving additional sensor data on our approaching visitor, and we need immediate analysis. Chen and Gorks made their way to the Defense Command Center, where they found Rivera studying tactical displays that showed the mysterious object in greater detail. The new data was disturbing. Whatever was approaching possessed capabilities that challenged basic assumptions about physics and engineering. Admiral, Chen said by way of greeting. "What do we know?" "More than we did this morning and less than we need to know by tomorrow," Rivera replied grimly. "The object is definitely artificial, definitely intelligent, and definitely not using any technology we understand. But here's the interesting part. It's been observing us. He manipulated the display to show communication intercepts. Our sensors have detected scanning beams directed at major population centers throughout the galaxy. Whatever is approaching us has been studying galactic civilization for months, possibly years. And now it's decided to make contact?" Chen asked. Though whether it's peaceful contact or something else remains to be determined. Trade Minister Gork studied the tactical display with professional interest. "Admiral, what are our defensive capabilities against this threat?" "Unknown," Rivera admitted. "Our kinetic weapons might be effective, or they might be completely useless. Energy weapons could work, or they could be absorbed and turned against us. We're facing something that doesn't follow the rules we understand." "So, what's the plan?" Chen asked. Rivera smiled, that particular human smile that had become familiar throughout the galaxy. "We prepare for anything and hope for the best. The joint defense platform will be completed within 6 months. All major species have contributed their best technology and most experienced personnel. And if diplomacy fails, we fight using every tactic we can think of," Chen finished. "Exactly. Because if there's one thing humans have taught galactic civilization, it's that the most sophisticated opponent can still be defeated if you're willing to think differently about the problem." 3 months later, first contact occurred not with fanfare or formal ceremony, but with a simple message broadcast on all known communication frequencies. "We are the architects. We have observed your recent development with interest. Prepare for evaluation." The response from galactic civilization was swift and decisive. Defense platforms activated throughout civilized space. Fleets deployed using tactics that combine the best features of energy weapons with kinetic bombardment systems. And at the heart of it all, human advisors worked alongside alien commanders to develop strategies that emphasized adaptability over technological superiority. When the architect ships finally arrived, massive structures that seemed to bend space around them, they found not a collection of individual species defending their separate territories, but a unified galactic civilization that had learned to think like humans, practically, creatively, and with absolute determination to survive. The war that followed would last 3 years and reshape galactic civilization once again, but humanity's influence was already secure. They had done more than simply join galactic society. They had taught it how to fight for its survival using the most powerful weapon in the universe, the willingness to ignore conventional wisdom when it stood in the way of getting the job done. And, in the end, that proved to be exactly what the galaxy needed to survive the greatest threat it had ever faced. Because sometimes, the most primitive solution really is the most devastating. And sometimes bringing lasers to a rock fight just means you're not thinking creatively enough about rocks. The architects had come expecting to find a galaxy full of species limited by their own technological sophistication. Instead, they discovered something far more dangerous, a galactic civilization that had learned to fight like humans. The momentum of that discovery would carry civilized space through the greatest conflict in its history, proving once and for all that when it comes to survival, physics beats sophistication every time.